Moscow is furious over Western discussions regarding potential nuclear armament for Ukraine. This is escalating tensions in the already volatile 33-month conflict that continues to grip Eastern Europe. The Kremlin's sharp rebuke comes in response to mounting speculation about nuclear weaponry, revealing the precarious balance of global security hanging by a thread. Here's a report.
The battlefield tells a grim story. Ukraine is losing ground fast in the east. Russian forces have captured more territory in Kharkiv and pushed back Ukrainian troops in the Kursk region. Fatigued Ukrainian soldiers face mounting losses as Moscow deploys modern weaponry. Kyiv reported a record 188 drone strikes, devastating critical infrastructure. The Biden administration is intensifying support. Longer-range U.S. missiles are now being used to strike inside Russia. Biden administration also supplying anti-personnel mines to Ukraine, drawing criticism. However, U.S. intelligence agencies caution that these efforts will not significantly alter the war's trajectory in the short term. Moscow retaliated by firing a new experimental missile capable of striking most European cities. Now, in what could be the most dangerous move, Biden administration is reportedly mulling transfer of weapons of mass destruction to Ukraine. The Kremlin calls any suggestion of arming Ukraine with nuclear weapons absolutely irresponsible. This sharp rebuke comes after a New York Times report citing unnamed Western officials claimed the possibility of such a move. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev warns that supplying nuclear weapons to Ukraine would be considered an attack on Russia itself, grounds for a nuclear response. So where did Ukraine's nuclear weapons go? Ukraine surrendered its nuclear arsenal, the world's third largest after the Soviet Union collapsed, transferring it to Russia under international agreements. Now, whispers of reversing that decision are raising the stakes. The rhetoric marks a dangerous escalation in the 33-month war, where nuclear threats are now entering the conversation. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
John Erath is a Senior Policy Director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation and former member of the U.S. delegation to NATO. Mr. Erath is now joining us live from Washington, D.C. Mr. Erath, thank you very much for joining us at this hour. What is the outgoing president of the U.S. trying to do here? If at all the nukes deployment to Ukraine is true and it happens, what will be the detriment of that action?
To begin with, this is an absurdity. There is no serious discussion in Washington about transferring nuclear weapons to Ukraine or anywhere else. This is a rumor that started in the New York Times based on some very poorly informed people speculating that if Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons, it should try to get them back. Mm-hmm. Well, when Ukraine gave up nuclear weapons in 1994, it transferred them to Russia, and I think that's the least likely place to want to give them back. So this whole discussion is absolutely absurd, and there is little point in having it now. All that this is serving to do is to further the Russian strategy of increasing the perception of nuclear threat in order to get Western governments to limit assistance to Ukraine.
Mm. Mr. Erath, let me ask you this. Several critics argue that President Joe Biden is trying to make it harder for incoming President Donald Trump, first okaying Ukraine to use the ATACMS, and now this report. Now that you've said it's a rumor, let's dispel that report. Let's talk about the ATACMS.
This is something that was under discussion for some time. It's probably a decision that should have been made 6 months earlier. For the reasons that the Biden administration did not want to increase tensions and increase the possibility of a nuclear response from Russia, they chose not to make the decision until rather late in the game. I cannot speculate. I don't work for the Biden administration, so I cannot speculate exactly what it was that prompted them to make the decision at this time. Mm-hmm. It could very well have been that the incoming Trump administration they wanted to make the decision instead of having the Trump people make it. It could be that they looked at what was going on the battlefield and decided this was a better time to do it. The decision to supply the ATACMS is something that will actually help the Trump administration in its efforts to negotiate an end to the war by providing more leverage. So it could be that as well.
Mr. Erath, finally, what do you think will be Putin's next action with the above developments and Britain throwing its spanner in the works by issuing sanctions to Russia?
Not just Britain. There was another set of sanctions on Russian financial entities in Washington this week as well. I think Putin will stick to his game plan that he has followed very carefully for over 2 years now, and continue to try to make threats to increase the possibility that the threat perception will be raised. And he will try to look for divisions in NATO countries and try to cause disagreement and dissent and limit the supply of assistance to Ukraine.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. I've been talking to Mr. John Erath. He is a Senior Policy Director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation and also a former member of the U.S. delegation to NATO. Mr. Erath, thank you for talking to us today.
You're very welcome.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.